Welcome back, guys. We want to create the next project that we want to run with. We want to call it using namespaces. Okay, we've actually seen that when we are working with our C++, we've actually got using namespace standard. So we want to actually create a project that works with just namespaces. And we see how a namespace is created. We see how we can use our namespace. So I've got some code that I've got here that I want to be working with. I'll explain the code and we'll create the same output as this code. But let me explain how each of these lines of code work. So we've got using namespace standard there. We've got namespace book, namespace chapter. And then within the namespace, this is actually how our namespace standard will also be created, whereby we can say we want a function to print name. And print name has the following concept, which is std, and then we've got these two colons. We've got our cout, and then it gives us the content that we want in the cout, and we've also got our end line. Same goes for our namespace chapter. And then when we get to our main, we'll actually need to do a print name, and then our chapter, we put these colons to our print name. So in other words, this referencing, if I can call it referencing, we will learn more about it at a later stage when we're actually working with a class. We're simply saying when we've got these two columns, we want to be able to make sure that whatever it is that we are calling for that particular content links to an object that exists already. So in this particular case, if we are saying chapter and then print name, we're saying chapter is our namespace, which we are linking to our print name. So in other words, print name simply gives us what is there for book, but for us to be able to print what is within chapter, we need to actually link chapter and print name so that it prints whatever we've got in our chapter. And then our namespace, we still need to be able to reference it and use it as we are working with our code. So let's go back to our code, and we want to create namespace book, namespace chapter. Okay, so we're not changing much. Maybe let's put some comments, and we say create namespaces here. Okay, so we said our first namespace is namespace book, like that, and we've also got namespace chapter, which then gives us the following. So if we come back to our code, we actually notice this is how we've created it. I've just reduced our code, so to speak. So at the same time, we need to also create a function which is void print name, and it's got nothing in the brackets. So we would want to do that here. Void print name, nothing in the brackets, and we've got curly brackets. We do the same for the next one, like that, where we've also got our print name. There we now need to actually put this line of code where we said we've got standard, we've got our cout, and whatever it is that we want to be able to display. So let's do that here, and we say std. If we put our colon, we can now be able to see that we can put our C out. We put whatever content we want. We put our end line, and then we are done. We can also do the same for the second part of our chapter, and then we put whatever it is that we want to work with. So for the book, we can then say the following: book title, introduction to C++, like that. And then we can also do the same for our chapter, and we say chapter 1, the basics, like that. Sorry, this doesn't work. This is for C, not for C++. Okay, so as it stands now, we've got our two namespaces, which is book and chapter. We also need to reference this line here for our book, whereby we say using namespace book, like that, so that we can be able to now reference the first part of our code, which is now print name, we open and we close brackets, and then to reference the second part. So we said print name in our main. This references namespace book. Okay, now to actually then call our chapter, we need to then say chapter. We put two full colons, and then we put our print name, so that we can actually be able to print whatever is in our chapter. So this calls namespace chapter, like that. So if we were to run it, we'll now actually be able to see the following. It gives us in our output book title, introduction to C++, chapter 1, the basics. So in other words, we've actually created a namespace, and our namespace is called book, is the first namespace, and the second namespace is chapter. Within our namespaces, we've got a function called print name, where we actually are working with the standard namespace that we have created, and we are then saying the two colons help us call whatever it is that we want to do. So with our two colons, we're calling cout, and then we display whatever cout has, and then it gives us the output that we see on the screen. So I can round up the lesson on namespaces, and I'll catch you in the next